Hello and welcome to Noble Mind.
Noble Mind is a podcast exploring mindfulness, meditation, and psychology. Hello listeners. In this episode, Patricia Isis shares about the healing potential of engaging in artistic and creative pursuits and how to use doodling in a mindful way to bring presence and self-awareness into your daily life. Patricia Isis holds a PhD in the Expressive Therapies with an emphasis on Arts Therapy. She's a licensed mental health counselor in Florida and a registered board-certified art therapist, credentialed supervisor, and has trained in mindful self-compassion and mindfulness-based stress reduction. Dr. Isis is the author of the Mindful Doodle Book, 75 Creative Exercises to Help You Live in the Moment.
If you are a fan of Noble Mind, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter, also our YouTube channel. You can join our free Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/noblemind. You can also learn about coming events, get our show notes, and join our email list at noblemindpodcast.com. Enjoy the show. We are here with Patricia Isis. Thanks so much for joining us on Noble Mind. We'd love to get started with hearing a little bit about you and your background.
Okay, it's such a delight and privilege to be here with you both. Thank you for the invitation. Let's see. Well, I currently am a PhD in the Expressive Therapies with an emphasis on art therapy. And my master's degree is the same in the Expressive Therapies with an emphasis on art therapy because I've always enjoyed all the arts, art, music, dance, drama, psychodrama, and poetry, and the power of creative expression for healing and enlightenment. So for the past, since 1980, when I got my master's degree at Lesley University in Cambridge, Mass., I have been a practicing art therapist, and I also am a licensed mental health counselor in Florida, where I live. And additionally, I was fortunate enough in 2000 to be sent by the hospital I was working for outpatient as part of an Arts and Healthcare Advisory Committee to work with Jon Kabat-Zinn in a teacher training for MBSR, Mindfulness-based Stress Reduction. And after that, I became a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher and taught for 13 years outpatient through the hospital system, a gigantic hospital system in Miami, which was incredibly wonderful. And then in 2015, I found mindful self-compassion and then trained with Chris Germer and Kristen Neff and have been a certified mindful self-compassion teacher since 2017 and been teaching regularly through a collaboration with a nonprofit called Mindful Kids Miami, since I live in Miami, Florida, which our mission is to bring mindfulness to all the children in Miami-Dade County through the grown-ups. And we have a collaboration with the teachers and counselors in the gigantic Miami-Dade County public school system, where we offer discounted mindfulness-based classes, including my own. So it's very exciting. I currently work full-time as a clinical art therapist in our public school system, which is the fourth largest in the United States. And unfortunately, the only one that has a clinical art therapy department that has been around for 42 years. Wow.
Where the mission for all of the art therapists who are registered and board certified is to bring the arts to children with emotional and behavioral disabilities to enable them to be successful in learning. I also have a very active part-time private practice through art therapy and mental health counseling, and teach not MBSR, MSc now solely, really, because that's where my heart is at the moment. And because I've been blessed with so much energy, I also have written a book in 2016 called the Mindful Doodle Book, and do a lot of workshops, and want to send out the word that everybody has access to creativity. That's the long version of your question.
Beautiful. So many juicy directions to go. Well, yeah, Patricia, we've talked a fair amount with other guests about MBSR, mindfulness, self-compassion. I'm really curious about how that connects for you with art therapy and how you've taught that. But maybe it would be good to kind of go back, because I think probably our listeners are less familiar maybe with expressive arts and art therapy. Maybe you could just tell folks a little bit about what that world is like. I don't even know where to, how to be more specific than that. How is art therapy different than maybe just doing something on your own, or, how is it different than other therapies, or, dive in wherever you like.
Great question, and often very misunderstood.
Yeah.
So to be an art therapist, one must go to graduate school and get a master's degree in art therapy. And people don't understand that, because it sounds like it's therapy through art. It's much more unique and expansive than that, because when you study to be an art therapist, or when you're going to see an art therapist, you are going to be with somebody who's done a tremendous amount of work in the area of creativity and imagery. We know that art brings order to chaos. It holds the suffering. It creates a container. And I'm using art very broadly. People get very intimidated by that word, because in our culture in the United States, people think art generally means you have to be skilled, young, or crazy to appreciate it. Pretty much. And the truth, I'm here to say, is that everyone has access to creativity in your own way. And we don't realize it. We have to make art. Just how your routine of getting up and whatever you do every day is an art. How you arrange wherever you live. I mean, it doesn't have to be extraordinary or a masterpiece. Yet it is a way to access ourselves that we don't have any other way to do that except through dreams. And dreams we often don't remember. But when we make art in any way, whatever your art is, we can access our habits of being and feeling, and ways that we navigate challenges. And that's really important, because very often we end up wondering, why am I doing this over and over again when it hurts me? And so when you see an art therapist, you're with someone, and make sure they're registered, ATR, after their name, that they've gone to school, graduate school, and gotten proper training. Some people call themselves art therapists because simply they use art. And so they think that's enough. And it's dangerous. They can hurt you, because we're dealing with the unconscious mind. Inevitably, imagery comes up, and it doesn't have to be, again, a skilled image. It can be abstract, something that no one understands, and you don't even have to put words to it. But art therapists are trained to look at trends, look at line quality, placement, color choice, themes, a tremendous amount of features in a piece of art. And is extremely sensitive and unique. And I'm so glad I'm getting the chance to say that, because it's super important. You can do art for yourself, and it will be therapeutic. You can do it, just any kind of creative process. When people are hurting, they create. It's something we have to do. We do it without realizing it. Very often when we're in the depths of despair, we find ways to build or sing or dance or write poetry or play an instrument or go outside and grow things. I mean, wherever your heart leads you.
Yeah, I'm thinking even like people who are going through hard times, who feel like they just want to stay in action and like organize their house or clean things up, or like that's a way of managing stress. It's also a way of creating a beautiful environment and, making something happen in the world that feels sort of creative in itself.
Yes, and it's very empowering, and it gives you a sense of control. It's comforting. I did this. This is mine. It's coming from me. When somebody makes a piece of art in whatever media, regardless of the media, the material they use, it's really like an emotional x-ray because it's coming from the inside outside. So you're making the invisible feelings, sensations, experiences visible. So you shift your relationship to them in that process. And then you have it. It no longer has you. So even in that experience of making any kind of creative whatever, you are allowing yourself an opportunity for some empowerment and a relationship that you didn't realize you could have.
Wow. My mind is being blown.
That's why I'm so in love with art therapy. I've been practicing for 42 plus years because it's so important. And I want to get the word out because it's still so misunderstood, even now in the space of the mental health crisis we're in the world. Yeah. Now more than ever, it's important for people to understand these differentiations. Yeah.
Yeah. I will co-sign what you said a few minutes ago about how important it is to understand that art therapy is its own distinct specialty, that it's its own practice. And so you might have a therapist who encourages you to do creative things, or who supports your artistic endeavors. And that's wonderful, or who even uses art sometimes in the work that they do, but that is different entirely than seeing someone who has years of specialized training in how to do this work. So yeah, as you're saying, I think it's misunderstood, and I'm all for more art everywhere, but there is, I think, a sense that it doesn't always, the word hasn't gotten out fully that, there really is this like important specialty, specialized expertise that you all have.
Yeah. And we're witness as our therapists to the unconscious. So if someone has a trauma that they've repressed for a long time, it inevitably comes out in the art in some kind of image that may be bizarre or distorted. The art therapist is trained to know how to address that, to guide that person, depending on where they are, their age, their functioning level. I mean, that's so important. In some cases, I may be witness to some things that person is not aware of consciously at the moment, that it's coming up that I can't say for sure. Art therapists cannot interpret, let me make that clear, cannot read your art and tell what's going on with you.
It's not tea leaves.
No.
There's no dictionary in the back.
No. I mean, my daughter would say, I'm not going to do art in front of you, Mom, because I don't want you to find out about these things. That when she was a teenager, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to tell anyway.
Right.
But we are trained to know how to help a person navigate through their own personal symbolism. And when you're ready, and the language, how to address that. Because in a lot of cases, we work with people who are not real verbal. And the art is really their only way of expressing some things that really are really hard to put into words, or impossible, frankly. Things that have happened to people. Yeah.
I'd love to hear any insights you have about art that involves using language versus art that's strictly visual, and whether there's different benefits to each kind.
That's, again, very broad. The best answer is it depends. It depends on functioning, goals, age, what's going to be the best way of addressing and creating safety with language, without language. I am a mindfulness-based positive art therapist. My focus, my intention, I'm very eclectic, is just meeting whoever is there and holding the space with tenderness, with it's sacred. It's actually an incredible experience to witness somebody creating what's happening for them in whatever way they wish, and honoring it just with presence. Sometimes it's best to have silence because language can interrupt the process. It really depends on what the needs are and what will create the most comfort and the most trust and rapport. So this person can feel safe just expressing in the moment what is happening. Because generally, by the time someone comes to see an art therapist, they've been through something that is no fun. They don't usually come when they're having a great time. Similar to mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindful self-compassion classes that I've been teaching for a number of years, people don't generally join because life is going well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I wonder if you, again, forgive my ignorance, but I'm sure other folks don't know this either, which is like, what does a session look like? Like if someone goes to art therapy, what happens there? Like, is it just a room full of creative things and you just grab whatever you want? Or do you suggest modalities to use? Or like, what happens in that room?
I'm going to have to say it depends. There is a wide range of possibilities. Art therapists work with open art studios where you can go in a group or individually and choose what resonates with you and do that. Art therapists work with couples, families, individuals. And so it depends. Sometimes I'll do a 5-drawing art therapy based assessment. There's a number of assessments art therapists use. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll ask a person to come in if they want to in advance of the session and make a self piece with any material. Where are you in your life right now? Bring it in. You can sing it. You can dance it. You can spoken word it either in front of me or before the session. Art therapists are as interested in the process of the creativity because that gives you access to how we perceive the world, which you can't articulate that to somebody. And so watching somebody's process of creating will give you and them access to, ooh, that's my way of looking. And we have very narrow views. And that really incarcerates us in terms of how we respond versus react to what we perceive moment to moment. And that's where mindfulness is so magical because it opens the gates, honoring all the possibilities. So that's the best way I could answer your question. It also depends on the art therapist. There's many approaches. There's Jungian, there's psychoanalytic, there's Gestalt, you're aware, you're both mental health professionals. Oh, there's some people that specialize in those areas. I tend to be eclectic. I just go where it seems most safe for that particular individual or group.
In our earlier communication, you were saying that you wanted people to realize that they can access their inner landscape easily and safely through art therapy, but mindful doodling, which your book is about, and that it allows us to have a perspective on how we view the world and how our habits of navigating challenging emotions. I wonder if you can say more about that.
Yes, it's the book that was published in 2016 is called the Mindful Doodle Book. 75 creative exercises to help you live in the moment. And it took 25 years from idea to publication. It's really one of my dreams in bringing the arts to the world. And doodling has gotten a lot of attention, actually, of late. There was a book published in 2014, Sunny Brown, called The Doodle Revolution for Entrepreneurs. And she did some research that showed that doodling actually enhances memory retention.
Oh, yeah.
And so doodlers actually, during a boring lecture or phone conversation, recall more of the information than people glazed over sitting there. So doodling has been elevated. And we also know that there is some research around it being connected to the executive function of the left side of the frontal lobe. So doodling releases a lot of performance anxiety, unlike drawing. Drawing is usually connected with being attached to a certain outcome. I want it to look a certain way. Whereas doodling is whatever, whenever, however. It gives us a freedom and a spaciousness. So when we add awareness to doodling or mindful doodling, then we're adding an intention, a consciousness, so that it allows non-artists, which is 99% of the adult population, access to their inner world. So the book, the Mindful Doodle Book, addresses all sorts of life experiences in terms of emotions. There's grief doodle, and then there's loneliness doodle, and joy doodle, excitement and delightment doodle. And then there's life situations like procrastination doodle, a real favorite. Resilience doodle.
I can use that one.
What's on my mind doodle, which we just finished a research study, myself and my colleagues out of California, on a what's on my mind doodle protocol that I created, where you empty the contents of your mind onto a blank piece of paper through doodling. So any line, any shape, any color, you can use a pencil, you can use a pen, whatever you want. A Sharpie. Sharpies are a little more risky because they're permanent, but it's whatever makes you happy. And then you have your mind there in front of you. What's on the front of your mind? What's in the back of your mind? What's weighing on your mind? What are in the crevices of your mind? And then the intention, the invitation is to highlight only those thoughts that benefit you in your life right now. We know the mind has a negativity bias, so there tends to be an abundance of pretty aversive thoughts in the human mind, moment to moment. So this gives you the opportunity to shift your relationship to your thoughts and then select the ones that are good for you in the present moment. So you highlight them in line, shape, and color any way you want. You cut them out, and then you put them inside a circle, another piece of paper, where you're creating a really beautiful neighborhood. Because our mind is, as Anne Lamott said, kind of a bad neighborhood that people don't want to go into. So then you have this neighborhood that you created, this new landscape of thoughts that will benefit you so that you can then relate to them. How can I make this part of my life now? And we found in the study that people reported in very high numbers, overwhelming numbers, increased feelings of empowerment, creativity, and optimism, decreased feelings of depression and anxiety. Not everybody was an artist. It's easy to access. All you need is the ability to make marks. You can do it in the sand if you want. It's very versatile.
So there's a structure to it beyond what we do when we're bored in high school. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that. And the people are guided through a process.
Yes. And in the Mindful Doodle Book, there is a prompt through each one that you can follow if you like. You could change language-wise if you're using with someone else. If you're a mental health professional, you can use the Mindful Doodles in a session. And yes, there is, you're right, it's a structure. Doodling is random, almost like scribbling. It's spontaneous and without direction. However, mindful doodling, it's deliberate. Yet it can take as much or little time as you want. And yet it's about being curious and being tender toward yourself in the process.
So having mindfulness and compassion training must facilitate that process.
Very much. Yes, that is true. However, it's also user-friendly for kids in a way that you can offer mindfulness and compassion training through art making this way. In terms of, for example, oh, okay, you're mad today. Well, If you were a detective or a dragon looking at the mat, what do you think the dragon would draw right now or doodle? That sort of, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'm just pulling out something. So many. I wanted to make it so it was versatile, both for therapists to use, parents to use, maybe spiritual leaders to use, maybe people on an airplane. My dream is it would be in the pocket in front of you.
Oh, I love that.
To use.
So much better than those airplane magazines.
Or in a funeral home or in a homeless shelter, that it's really user-friendly for all sorts of people at all different levels. And also, most of all, fun and playful, which we need desperately.
Yeah.
I remember reading that the way theater began in ancient Greece is it was a way for the citizens to process a public issue. So it wasn't so much entertainment as like we're considering this. How do we feel? What do we think about this issue? So that it reminds me of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many possibilities with this. And also, because it doesn't require a lot of art supplies either. So it's not an economic problem. You can use anything really to. So in the jails and in places where there's not a lot of access to materials necessarily.
I also feel like the doodling is a great way to get around that self-criticism, self-judgment, that high standard of like, I need to be talented and skillful. And if I'm not Van Gogh, why bother or whatever? That doodling feels, as you're saying, like the everyman's art, kind of like it's something that people do and even get in trouble for doing when they're kids in school back in the day. I hope that doesn't happen as much now, but there's something sort of relatable and accessible about it. As you were saying before about like, if you say you're drawing or painting or something, now suddenly there's like in a lot of people's minds, like a standard that has to be met. But I feel like doodling doesn't bring that baggage with it.
Right. It really allows us to release any attachment to the outcome, which in and of itself is a mindfulness practice.
Totally,
and
yeah.
Present moment. So there's a present moment doodle. So I do this very often with my students. So where are you now? What does that look like? And so when you put it into line, shape, and color, and it goes beneath the verbal, which is more what we sometimes what we think somebody wants to hear, or what we say over and over again, like, how are you? I am fine. Rather, it's more authentic. And then the other beautiful piece is that we have something to refer back to. We can look, if it's a visual piece, we can look at a process that way. We can come back, oh, look, a month ago, this is what it looked like, and look at it now. Look at the shifting that's going on. Because very often we don't notice. We're so distracted and busy. We don't see that there's been a shift here or there. And what does that go along with? What else is happening for us? And allowing us to also appreciate our ability to surf the waves, as John Kabat-Zinn says, of our lives.
So then it's a way to become aware of dynamics that are not on the table for us and to commune with them and work with them and move them forward.
Yeah, and celebrate them. Yeah. Yeah, because we're resilient. We're managing, but we don't always see that because we focus on what's wrong, what's not working, where we messed up, because of the way the mind is set up for survival, not happiness.
So you're also bringing your MBSR and mindful self-compassion training to bear.
Yes, definitely.
We were also saying that it requires self-discipline, awareness, and practice.
Yes, because it's not a one shot. It's not like, oh, yeah, I get it now. I can move on and have my life. Things are constantly changing. It's the only thing we can count on. So the practice of opening and allowing what is inside and outside of us, moment to moment, is the discipline, is the awareness of the awareness. Mindfulness is so, like art therapy, misunderstood. It's a very juicy word, and yet very complicated in terms of the layers of being human and our ability or willingness, depending on where we are emotionally and mentally and spiritually, to look at what is happening for us here and now. And that's why I love mindful self-compassion too. That idea of maybe I'm not ready to address this particular situation. And that's okay. I can move my attention and do something that's a little bit more comforting right now. And everything, as Chris Germer says, we're all slow learners. Baby steps. And so the doodling can also just be a ventilation. It can also just be a marking of the moment. Not everything has to be delved into and analyzed. That's not necessary. It's just a way of honoring, here I am, and I'm alive, and I'm doing the best I can with this, whatever this is. Yeah.
Would you say that doodling has gotten a bad rap, a bit like graffiti, perhaps, as something you're not supposed to do, as a waste of time? In reality, as graffiti has been raised and uplifted as an art form.
Yes. No, yes. Yes, absolutely. And I tell kids, if you're a doodler, let your teacher know you're getting more of the information than the other kids. You'll probably do better on the test because you're doodling. And I tell teachers all the time, because I still work in the schools, it's okay. That doesn't mean they're not paying attention. It means they are. So yeah, doodling helps. It actually helps. It also is a very organic expression. And, a lot of times kids are bored, and I work in high schools and middle schools with teenagers who are up all night watching whatever they're watching on a screen. And they come to school really early, and I encourage them to doodle because when you make art of any kind, there's this sublimation process where it actually increases your energy and investment. And it's pretty, you might find this if you know what I mean. You might be exhausted, but then you create something and somehow you're activated.
I have quite a strong self-critic, so that's going to appear when I start doodling as well. How might I work with that?
Well, it might be an interesting dialogue to to answer your self-critic with a doodle. And dialogue back and forth between a doodle dialogue.
Like a doodle
so that
off.
you can honor your self-critic, because I'm sure your self-critic has helped you through very, very, very difficult times. We need our critic. However, we need our self-compassionate voice more, because even though they're both there to protect us, they're both really there for the same reason. The self-critic can be harmful because it really doesn't help us feel that good about ourselves. On the contrary, it hurts us. Whereas the self-compassionate voice, which often gets drowned out by the critic, is there because it has our back. The critic does too, but the self-compassionate voice really honors our strengths, our capacity for success and growth, and the fact that we've managed this long through a lot of difficult stuff.
One way might be, just to make sure I understand it, might be to have the self-critic doodle as well, express itself, and then sort of have a dialogue between various parts.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to share that with me, please do. I'd love to see your doodle dialogue. I have a doodle gallery on my website.
I love it.
With that, it's anonymous because I appreciate people's privacy in their doodles. But be sure, if you want to share it with someone you trust, because it's a good thing to connect on that level. Because sometimes if it's just us with our own art, it can be a little bit too insulating. And it's good to have someone that we trust. It could be a best friend, a partner, whatever, someone, a professional, a colleague that can offer us another set of fresh eyes, someone that we know cares about us. Yeah, I do recommend that. Yeah.
I'm so glad you're saying that, because I'm thinking that art is this is just my own kind of experience, not speaking from any expertise aside from a creative person, that art is on the one hand like a self-expression, like, a way of sort of seeing myself on the page or expressing something in me and getting it out or something. But it is a communication. So as you're saying, it does, if it's not shared, for me at least, there's something that feels like incomplete about it in some way. Not about it, not for everything, but there is something to that it's something that's wanting to be expressed and shared, at least some of the time. I know that's not true for everyone, but yeah.
Yeah. And also it's nice to be validated by another person, and someone that knows you and has your back and wants the best for you may see something in your art because they know you that you missed, that they point out, or something they relate to, because the common sense of humanity, which Neff has helped us also utilize in mindful self-compassion practices, that idea that we're all so intricately connected, that there's some part of everyone's story that someone can connect to. So you don't all feel alone in your experiences and how you see it. You're not ever alone. But when we're hurting, we often feel the most alone. And it creates more pain for us unnecessarily.
I love that connection to common humanity. Thank you. That's great.
I'm definitely ordering your book and studying.
I'm going to be doodling.
Wonderful. Let me know if it helps. A number of people have reported on using the book with so many populations, and that's my dream, to make it as user-friendly as possible. Yes, and there's research studies about that too, to validate it on a scientific level.
I think I'm going to have my students start doodling. I'll tell you how it goes. If any of them are listening, beware.
Feel free to doodle in my lectures.
But yeah, Patricia, I was appreciating also that you were saying about sharing it, but sharing it with somebody who you trust and, who you feel like has your back. I'm remembering, I don't know if it was, I did the Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's program a long time ago. It might have been that, but it could have been some other thing I read. And they were talking about how oftentimes when people are getting going with some creative process, that they inadvertently share it with someone close to them, but who doesn't get it, who's not supportive, or who might be critical or ask questions that sound critical, or like to be really like thoughtful about who you share those, early marks with, or the early beginnings with. You want it to be someone who's really going to fan the flames and be like nothing but supportive and curious. And that really stood out to me, hearing that.
Yeah, because really it is, like I said, sacred.
Yeah.
Honestly, it is a spiritual experience to sit with someone making art of any kind, because really what you're doing is you're connecting to something larger than yourself. You're bringing out what we all carry around, everyone. It's soulful, it's heartful. You're right. And so to be very thoughtful about who you share it with. I mean, children, of course, this is a different matter. I'm talking about high functioning people that have the ability for insight. I mean, art is therapeutic in and of itself. Just the making, just the creative act, we know, is healing. And, my dissertation research was all around grief and using art to heal ourselves through grief. And really, I mean, the reason I became an art therapist is because I used to take art classes as a little girl from for the age of 4 to the age of 11. And my art teacher was like a second father to me. He was an amazing man, a black hunchback. And he was just a funny looking guy, but just, he brought art to us in all sorts of ways. And then he got killed in an automobile accident on the way to art class when I was 11. And I couldn't go to his funeral because of being white, because he was a black man. And I had to find a way to honor him. And because the art was so important for us, and I found a book about art therapy when I was 14. Imagine that. This is a true story. And I decided then, even though there was very few art therapy programs, no one knew what it was, that's what I had to do, because it helped me so much. And when my mother died, when I was 21. It was very dramatic in my arms, actually. And I have to say, what helped me cope was my meditation practice, which I found in Boston when I was in graduate school, and my art. And that has sustained me. I don't mean for it to sound so dramatic. It's just that it is.
Right. I mean, it's
For
right.
us.
Yeah,
We deserve it. We are alive and we deserve to know ourselves as much as we can. And that's one way of doing it. Most people have the capacity if you have the motor skills, so to speak.
And it's another way of knowing. One could use words, but if one moves, it's embodied movement. If it's visual, it's nonverbal, it's non-conceptual. It's like a whole different terrain to get to know yourself in.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. Right. And whatever it is, whether it's movement, poetry, drama, music of any kind, whatever, you'll know. Your heart will tell you. Your heart knows what you need if you listen carefully and without judgment, to just release the judgment. That it has nothing to do with skill, not what we're talking about here. This is pure expression without technique, without intervention. And it's a gift that we all can benefit from. Many of us, most of us, I would say.
So it's another source of knowing. It's very profound.
It is profound. And anything can be an art material when you think about it.
Right. Yeah. Collage, sculpture, found objects.
Yeah. And when you're making art, you're present. You're totally there. That's, it allows you that beautiful relationship with the feedback loop of coming back to you. It's going out like breath. It comes in, it goes out. It's just a beautiful dance when you think about that. And there's no wrong answer. There's no way you can fail, really, when you consider the possibilities. Yeah.
And when I think about religious art and spiritual experiences I've had and how art factors into that, there's something much more profound there than pretty images or songs, including ceremonies like communing as a ceremony when everybody's equal. The homeless person is there in the circle as well as the millionaire.
And very often mandalas, which is a circle, and it is used in very often in religious symbolism. And it can be used easily as a meditation practice, either a pre-drawn circle, like I explained for the What's on Your Mind protocol, or making your own circle and starting in the center, like we do in meditation, starting with our breath, perhaps, or some other anchor that's easy for us to access, and moving from the center out with any line, any shape, any color, any material that you wish. You could do it in movement as well. You could do it in voice. You could do it in words, whatever. And what happens is it's a centering, it's a grounding process. So it's another way of creating a relationship with your whole self in the present moment that you can then return back to if you wish, in any capacity, with a group, individually, by yourself, and with a friend. There's so many possibilities. That's why it's so expansive and can include so many different populations. And nowadays, with mental health being what it is and anxiety and depression being sky high, my hope is that your listeners will run with this and find a way to heal themselves in their own way and help others. Because when we embody these practices, other people automatically benefit energetically being around us. But first, we take care of ourselves. That's important. And then everyone else gets the goodies.
It's a very affordable and accessible way of doing some profound healing.
Yes, with or without a therapist.
I, for one, I'm going to order your book today. Thank you for sharing your work with us, Patricia. How can people learn more about you and your work?
Okay, well, thank you. I just want to end with one other poem that my book starts with, Rumi. It kind of sums up what we've been talking about. So I just want to mention it. It's 3 lines. Close your eyes, fall in love, stay there.
Beautiful.
That's what the Mindful Doodle Book opens with. So yes, you can order the Mindful Doodle Book through Amazon or through the publisher. Publisher is PESI, P-E-S-I, which is a mental health publishing company, publishing and media. It's also Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's easy to find. It's really a reasonable book. It's, I think, $20. And I do have a website, www.miamiarttherapy.com, because I've lived here most of my life. And I do teach regularly mindful self-compassion classes, which you can find through, I'm a certified mindful self-compassion teacher, and you can find me at the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, and I put my classes up there. I also am privileged to be a mindful self-compassion teacher for the Circle of Practice for the public, which is free for everyone 3 times a day, sponsored by the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion since the pandemic. I typically lead the circle on Tuesdays. If you're in New Zealand and Australia, it's Wednesday, I realize, at the 4 p.m. slot, Pacific Standard Time. I also give workshops often. I'm going to be presenting at the American Art Therapy Association's conference, the first face-to-face conference next month in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on this research study, which should be published shortly, and a workshop with my colleague who's a neuroscientist on neuroplasticity and mindful doodling. I'm excited. I want to thank you again for this opportunity, and a big bow to both of you and all the listeners as well.
Thank you, Patricia. It's been a great pleasure. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening today.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit subscribe, leave us a great rating or review, and spread the word. You can also go to noblemindpodcast.com to join our email list. You'll get a weekly behind-the-scenes message, news, announcements, and other special goodies we come up with just for you. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.